All right, everyone, we're back here with Neil and with Cynics, and we were debating earlier before the podcast on whether or not security services count as a niche. And my contention is no, they do not. They are a general industry. There's a lot of people who do security services. And so I was going to talk to Neil and say, what were your thoughts around are security services a niche? And do you need to be more exact with that phrasing? Or what kind of security services provider are you?
Yeah, so I think it's becoming less and less of a niche as the needs arise and more MSPs are moving into the space. Um, because just about, well, every vertical in reality needs security these days. Um, whether you are a one-man shop or an enterprise or the government, everyone is a target these days. Um, as long as they can extort money out of you or think they can extort money out of you, you're a target, even if you don't have the money.
And then you've got hacktivists who don't care about the money, just care about making your life difficult.
Very true.
Just because you somehow represent an industry they do not enjoy.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So you have, attacks that are targeted, whether it's hacktivists or attacks that are targeting, a specific IP or specific entities. But the bulk of your attacks are going to be generalized towards whoever they can reach. They're going to use bots or other means, spam, um, phishing, to target as many people as they can to try and catch that 1%. Which it's a lot more than that that'll click a phishing link. But anyways, I digress. Um, so security in itself, I think, is becoming less and less of a niche as more MSPs move into it. But there are security pieces that I think are still a bit more niche, such as compliance as a service, or possibly a fractional or virtual VCSO. Um,
I think we're going to see in the compliance as a service where you can see people go down to like, I specifically am a CIS provider. I am specifically a SOC 2 provider. And so I think we're going to see people get specific with their compliance as a service.
yeah. So we're seeing a bigger need or bigger desire for companies to want to be not just say they're secure, but have more like, are we really secure? So we offer compliance as a service. If they don't have a specific regulatory body that they need to meet, we'll use CIS as our base framework for them. So that, checks off a whole list of, all kinds of policies and procedures that you need to be building out and, verifying things on a regular basis. Security isn't just about technology. It's about the people and the policies and procedures in your company. And then we have, if we get a little bit more niche, we have companies that need to be PCI compliant. And if you're handling credit cards, like, aforementioned call centers in the last podcast, taking sales, you need to be PCI compliant.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I think when you look there, each one of those that Neil is listing off here, that is more work than your MSP can handle if you do all of those. So, like, for instance, let's say PCI compliant. How many restaurants and vendors are there in your area that need to do PCI compliance? Let me give you an answer. All of them. So how many restaurants and vendors do you have that take payments? And if you walk in and say, hey, as your technology provider, we focus on PCI compliance so you don't have to. See these 13 controls that changed just in 2025? We're going to take care of those for you. All you have to do is listen to our report once a year or once a quarter, and then you're going to be done. You can keep doing business. If you don't work with us, you got to pay one of these outside people, or you've got to have somebody come in and do a really expensive audit every year. And by the way, we'll also take care of your kiosk, we'll take care of your payment system, we'll take care of all this other stuff to make sure that you're online and able to do transactions 100% of the time. That is a security niche that needs to be met.
Yeah.
And, when I was in critical infrastructure, our security needs, there wasn't any MSPs that could handle us. I'm sorry. You guys are great out there. But I to this day, I still chuckle when I'm at a conference or somebody and somebody makes fun of Vanaheim and says, that's not a real pen test. And I'll sit back and go, what do you think a real pen test looks like? And I just sit there and I kind of chuckle because when I did pen tests in the critical infrastructure, the DoD was involved. So let me tell you about pen tests.
Pen tests is quite a broad scale.
Yes, because your rules of engagement are different based upon industry.
Yeah.
And you have to be aware of this. I've seen well-meaning pen testers come in and wreck a system because they didn't establish good rules of engagement. They did not know, do not touch this system. We will test that separately. Yeah. Do not exploit. And, today most pen testers know, do not exploit without permission. Yeah. They know that. But in different industries, they may assume that you just kind of understand, look, this is an air gap. We think this is an air gap system. And you're like, well, that's not air gap. And you go ahead and you disrupt it and show the exploitation of the code. And now they've lost $1 million. So knowing the industry kind of helps, especially in manufacturing people.
Yeah, knowing the industry and like the industry and the size of the company too. Like if you're a 10-person office handling, I don't know, paper sales, do you need $100,000 pen test where you involve the DOJ or whatever? Like, probably not. But you need some kind of pen test done to like analyze your environment and make sure there aren't blatant holes in it. Yes, absolutely. But the level of that pen test is very different.
To that point, though, I worked at a 50-person marketing company, and we spent 20 to 30 grand a year on a pen test.
Yeah.
Now, why would we spend 20 to 30 grand for a single pen test once a year? We own one report. When other people our size would be like, well, no, that would be absolutely strong, because we were doing business with large banks and we housed their data. And if we got exploited, then we lost all of our business overnight. Yeah. So $20,000 to $30,000 to mitigate that, or at least show that we were doing our due diligence, so that this bank could say on our SAS 70 report back then, just dating myself here, on the SAS 70, saying these are the things we have done to show that we are secure. We have had somebody come in and try to hack our systems and try to exploit these various vectors while inside our network. We gave them physical access to our network so that they could show where we were weak. Yeah. And then we would put that in our SAS 70 report. That was worth it. And we were a small company. And there are larger companies who would not pay that much because, just handling paper.
So either they had a different clientele or their risk acceptance tolerance was different. And, each company, their risk acceptance tolerance varies. Now, is it a good idea to ignore these risks? Probably not. And, so, you were saying you did an annual pen test. And so what we've moved towards is we do, we found the annual pen tests, it's a very long time these days between the testing to be annual. And it becomes more costly. You spin everything up. You spend $20,000, $30,000 to do the pen test. The way we do it now is we spin everything up once, and we uh, do a monthly minor check, and then quarterly we do the pen test and provide reports.
Yep.
And that way we can react quicker, find issues sooner, uh, and get them patched up sooner.
Well,
And
and that's kind of the
and that's
point.
above and beyond our usual monitoring and checks that we're doing in our SOC and MDR and XDR and all the other DRs you want.
And depending on the industry you're in, they may need that. So what kind of pen testing does a call center need? There's some different attack vectors that are unique to the call center industry that don't really affect anybody else. And as a niche security provider, you're aware of these. There's a very unique set of criteria for exploitation in the manufacturing industry. And they are crazy cool. Can you do them? Can you help them prepare for those kinds of exploits? And we want to make sure that they, excuse me, we want to make sure that we want to make sure you as a pen tester or you as a security company know what it takes to help somebody in that industry. So in the manufacturing industry, are you capable of detecting code level exploits that are unique and 0-day? That may exist in the wild for a long time before exploding. We know for a fact that these happen. They happened, not too long ago when a bunch of generators of mass just happened to fall apart, right?
Yeah.
And that was a unique attack vector. How did that code get on there? What about SCADA systems? Can you detect malicious intent on SCADA systems? Can you track that back to its source in an air-gapped environment? Do you know how to look at that stuff? Are you able to detect and deter a drone attack or a pineapple sitting on top of a building? These are things that you have to think about in critical infrastructure utilities or just standard manufacturing plants. You got a manufacturing plant creating widgets today and somebody's against those widgets. Maybe they have something to do with birth control or abortions. And a hacktivist is going to come in and try to take down that plant because in their minds, they're saving babies. You need to understand that industry and understand the unique concerns there so that you, as a pen tester, as a security provider, can say, here are the unique ways we handle your attack vectors given the risks facing your vertical. Now, if you do a standard security company, they're going to do the standard best practices, and you're going to get a nice blanket coverage, and you're going to show due diligence. But is that going to stop the specific attack vectors that affect your industry? Maybe, maybe not. To have somebody who could look in there and say, I know what they're after. I know the most common attack vectors for your industry. Let's make sure we have those covered and do the rest.
Yeah, like in call centers, if we circle back to that again, do you have a way of identifying if your phone system has been compromised and VoIP services are being used, like without your knowledge? Like if your phone system gets hacked and a malicious party is dialing out a ton of phone calls overseas where the charge is like, dollars per minute, not pennies, those bills rack up real fast. So do you have measures in place to detect and protect against that? Or, some other attacks we've seen is, someone gets upset with the call center and, they just start spamming them with calls. They set up some kind of dialer and send it to the call center. So how do you deal with that? So that could prevent legitimate customers from getting through or tie up your agents or, drive up your hold times. It can cause all kinds of effects. So, there's when you're niched and you're also looking at security, there's different things you got to be looking at for your niche.
Yeah, and Neil's just coming up with things off the top of his head there because he has experience with these industries. You have experience with your MSP with certain industries or with your security company with different industries. And you know that these are problems that they have. And I guarantee you, not every MSP understands that, or not every MSSP understands that. So as your field matures, if you can focus on a specific set of needs, you're going to have enough clients. I think it was Joe Rojas a couple of weeks ago said on the podcast, a couple months as of the broadcast of this one, said, there is more work in a single industry than you can handle. There's enough verticals out there that you can focus on one, and there could be like 2 MSPs in that vertical, and you guys are going to be okay with each other because there's too many for you to handle. So when you're thinking about security services, I see it as the same thing, is that if you're going to deliver security services, the attack vectors for different industries are different. A call center needs to be more worried about just what Neil said. Somebody doing a robo-dialer against their phones. What happens when they can't do outbound calls? How do you protect against that? Well, there are a bunch of systems that can do that. But did you think of that when you brought them on as a customer? Did you do a war game around like what would happen if somebody came in with a pair of bolt cutters and cut their line? Do you have physical protections around it? Do you have failover services? Do you have a failover site within 60 miles where they can be up and running by the afternoon? What are the things that you know that you can deliver when you walk in that door and say, hey, here's how I'm going to cover you? And the owner of that phone center says, I didn't think of that. And you'd be like, yeah, 60 call centers got shut down last year because of this specific attack. We don't want you to be one of them. And like, I didn't know that. Thank you for letting me know. You're telling me that? Yes, I can. I can help you with that. I can reduce the risk. No one can guarantee that it's going to be gone. It's just like a lock on your door. There's always a bigger tank that can knock down a door, but I can make it really hard. And so you want to be able to come into your industry, whether it's a donut shop, whether it's a flower shop, bakeries, call centers, credit card processing data centers, banks, everybody has a tax services, and they are unique and they're interesting, especially in the security industry. There are some fascinating attack vectors in the security industry. If you read enough on cyber warfare, the attack vectors that you would never think of. I mean, right now, TikTok is a big topic of the day in the United States because we had it banned and then it got unbanned. And it's like, why would somebody ban TikTok? Like, well, when you've got 200 million devices inside your border that are exploitable by a foreign actor, and if we get into a trade war with those foreign actors, how do you stop that? Well, you ban the app. Well, that's good. By banning the app, you're disrupting an entire part of the economy that depends on that app. So it's a lose-lose situation. So as an attack vector, how do you mitigate that? And that's just one example in one industry. And so focusing on that stuff as a security provider, you can now start providing unique solutions. Maybe it means that you come up with a unique piece of software or a unique piece of code that helps mitigate this. And it's unique to your service provider. Maybe you come up with something really cool that works around this without disrupting the call center or the architecture firm or whoever you're working with that day. But you have to know the industry to come up with these things. You have to know it really well.
Yeah. And I'd like to circle back on that illustration you did with the door and the tank. You can always have a bigger tank to knock down the door. But you also got to size the door according to your client. Like you said, a donut shop versus the Pentagon, they're going to have 2 different size doors. The value of what's behind it is very different, and who is likely to attack it is also very different. So the size of the tank coming for it is going to change. So, know your industry, know your vertical, look for creative ways to protect them, but make sure you're sizing it accordingly. Don't build Fort Knox for your donut shop. Like,
don't
unless your donuts are made of gold, but Yeah,
and that's something that you eventually figure out in the security industry is if you overprotect, you actually reduce security because your users will start to find ways around it and they will become your attackers. Because I have to do what to do my job now? No, people are lazy And if you make it too hard to get into their own building, they'll just make another door.
And yeah, and even if they don't find ways to circumvent it, you could be affecting the productivity or the efficiency of the business in a negative way that is unnecessary.
Yep.
You know, if it takes someone, 1 minute to get from their car to log into their computer, and now you've just layered in a bunch of different security measures where now you have, they got to check in at the gate before they park their car. Then they got to use the key pass to get in the building and talk to the security guard. And then, the list goes on, and all of a sudden you're at 30 minutes to get to their desk. And this business has no need doing all that. Well, now you've spent all kinds of money and you're wasting 30 minutes of, everyone's day times however many people are in the company.
I effectively call that, security as an attack vector. I'm sure there's a more eloquent way of putting it out there, or DDoS by security, right? the point in which your security is causing more disruption than an attacker would, right? Where you're trying to keep employees productive, and so you put enough security measures in that it's costing a 20% hit to productivity when the attacker would only cost 10% one time once a year. And so there is something to be said for that. That's another topic for another day. Make sure your security is user-friendly and fluid with workflow processes, people. But that's part of this, right? We keep going over this over again. You need to understand your industry when it comes to security. And if you're going to niche out, you can make a lot of money just focusing on a specific industry. Hey, I am going to focus on bank marketing firms in the Midwest. That's the only people I'm going to work with. I'm going to make sure they're secure and that they can do business with Wells Fargo, Citibank, Capital One, all the big companies out there. And then when people know that I do business, this is what I do, they're going to have a high level of confidence. Like, yes, I charge twice as much as everybody else does, but this is what I do. You will have your SOC 2 report. You will have your PCI report every January. It'll be ready to go. It'll be up to date. You can hand out to your customers right afterwards. You do not need to do anything with me. We will take care of your attack vectors. We will make sure that we have a response team specific to you that is on priority call, and we'll take care of this if this happens. And now your customers are coming to you going, oh, we need to work with this person. I don't care what you cost. You're solving my problem. And you're solving it, and you already know what their price point is, right? So you're like, you're on the higher end of the price point, but you're right under what they can afford, right under where their maximum is affording. So there's a lot of benefits to niching out in the security industry and creating those efficiencies around this is what we do. We do not secure banks. We secure marketing firms. We do not secure donut shops. We secure restaurants. That is what you need to look at, people. Thanks for coming on again, Neil. Great couple conversations here, and we'll look forward to having you on again. I'd love to kind of follow up maybe in 6 months or so to see how your niching is going, how you're growing, and what kind of your success story is.
Awesome. Always a pleasure, Adam.
Thanks, Neil.
Bye.